بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا، إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. I praise Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. I thank Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and I ask Allah to raise the status of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, his family, his companions, and all those who follow them in excellence until the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us in the Quran by his saying, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and hold on, cling to the rope of Allah together and do not separate. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, Yadullahi fawqa al-jama'a wa man shadda shadda ila an-nar. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said that the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is over the majority of this nation. And whoever deviates would deviate to the hellfire. It is an important thing that we understand the significance of sticking to Jamhur al-Ummah, to sticking to the majority of the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We are called Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah for a reason. And Al-Jama'ah, in that title, Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, refers to the methodology of the majority of the Muslims, past and present. And Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah has represented the vast majority of this nation since the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam until our day. And it is a matter of methodology, how our scholars receive and transfer information about the religion. And this way is a consistent way, an unbroken form of transmission of this religion, which has reached us to our time today. The next book that we'll be covering is what is on the screen, Madhahib, written by our Sheikh Muhammad Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti, the great scholar from Damascus, Syria, rahimahullah ta'ala, the martyr in the path of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. He wrote this book to clarify to us the methodology of the vast majority of the nation. And when we depart from that methodology, and that methodology, after the codification of these main four schools of uh, Sunni schools of law, these main four schools, Sunni schools of Islamic law, the people of this nation have not followed other than those four schools. And this methodology of how they transferred knowledge is something that he discussed and explained as a response to those who would have the Muslims leaving off those madhahib, those schools of thought. And when we say madhahib, we also would understand this equally applies to the schools of thought in al-aqidah, which are al-asha'ira wal-maturidiyya. So leaving them off or leaving the four schools of jurisprudence off, all of it is departing from the way of the majority of the nation. For all of us, I say it with no exception, all of us must follow one of the two schools of Aqidah and one of the four schools of thought in al-fiqh. So if we can post that, all of us must, M-U-S-T, and you can make it capital if you like, must follow one of the two schools in Aqidah and one of the four schools of jurisprudence. This is a must. The one who departs from this methodology has departed from the way of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah in creed and in practice. I know it's become unpopular to speak directly and to not mince your words, but I don't follow that methodology. When it comes to the religion and our religious knowledge, we need to be direct. We need to be straight, right? We need to say it as it is. We don't need to do mudahana. We don't need to compromise our religious principles for the sake of trying to please people. La. Our teachers would tell us, pleasing people is an end that can never be achieved. Pleasing people is an end or an objective that can never be achieved. You should keep this in your mind. Pleasing people is an end that can never be achieved. An objective will never be reached. So certain things must be said as they are. And we should not hesitate when it comes to these issues. As a people, and I think about this when we talk about history, I think about it all the time, especially when we talk about the history of African Americans or Black people in Islam in America. This point, because it wasn't emphasized, many of us have invalid acts of worship while not knowing it. And it's important that because a situation has become something doesn't mean we leave it like that. You know, we have to fix it, right? And then we have to learn and pass it on to succeeding generations. We cannot stay the same if we're mistaken. So we talked about Aqidah, and we're going to return in more details with Aqidah. But for right now, I want us to have a firm foundation in our Islamic sciences. It is extremely important for the task that we have. We have to think of the marathon, not the 40-yard dash. We have a long way to go. And Sheikh al-Buti, when he wrote this book, the title is really important. He said, اللامذهبية أخطر بدعة تهدد شريعة الإسلامية, which means that not following a school of thought, that's called اللامذهبية. So you would hear a person say, I'm Hanafi, or I'm Maliki, or I'm Shafi'i, or I'm Hanbali. And the alternative usually is La Madhabi. So that person, in Arabic, we say La Madhabi, meaning they don't follow a madhab. And such a claim in our time is the biggest false claim the person can make, but they don't know it. Because when one says, I don't follow a madhab, what they are really saying is, I follow my own madhab, or the madhab of my sheikh. I want you to put that up there. When a person says, I don't follow a madhab, meaning one of the four madhahib, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali, what they are really saying is, I follow my own madhab or the madhab of my sheikh. Please put that point, because it's very important that you understand that. Whenever you run upon somebody, say, what madhab do you follow? I don't follow no madhab. What that means is that I follow my own madhab, or I follow the madhab of my sheikh. Whoever is teaching me, I follow his madhab. So no one truly does not follow a madhab. The question then becomes, is the madhab that you are following a valid, trustworthy, reliable, scholarly madhab or not? No one does not follow a madhab, whether they follow the madhab of one of the four imams or others, or they're following their own madhab. They all follow a madhab. There's a school of thought. The question becomes, is that school of thought that you're following, that madhab, is it a qualified, reliable, scholarly methodology? That becomes the question. And there is no madhab called Quran and Sunnah. My madhab is Quran and Sunnah. There's no such thing. There's no madhab called Quran and Sunnah. And that's why this book is so important, so that all these terms can become clear to you, so that you would understand what is intended by a madhab. And we're going to talk about that, inshallah. But today, as the book is available for you. I'm going to, inshallah, be starting this book over the next few days, but I'm trying to give, so most of the ones who ordered the books went out. So I'm going to give at least one word, but there's the link here for those who didn't get the book yet. But we're going to go over this book. So what we're going to do now, we're going to read section B from The Reliance of the Traveler, which is going to summarize this book, its main points without the details, so that you can have sort of a map to study in the book. Because the way I'm going to teach this book is going to be the book itself, the book that it was refuting, and what the scholars said about this whole issue. So the study of the book is going to be a little intense, little details, because I'm going to add on top of what the author mentioned, some things that he didn't mention that are very important when understanding things. So you're going to get a lot of stuff in this book. A lot of information. So we're going to go to The Reliance of the Traveler, page 15, book B. So it's in the introductions of the book, book B, which is Kitab Mashru'iyatil Taqlid, the book of the validity of following qualified scholarship. So I'll switch where we're reading for right now. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Right. Rita, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Bismillah. Let us begin.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy on him, said, Introduction. Muhammad Saeed Booty. What is the proof that it is legally valid and even obligatory to accept the authority of qualified scholarship, taqlid, when one is not capable of issuing expert legal opinion, ijtihad, on matters of sacred law? There are several aspects to it, as discussed in the sections that follow.
Okay, so here are two terms I want you to have. Number one, al-ijtihad. And I just want you to give the Arabic terms. I'm going to explain them to you. Al-ijtihad and al-taqlid. Right? So these two terms are very important terms when we're talking about jurisprudence or al-fiqh. And those are functions, right? Or let's say jobs that one needs to be doing. Either one has the function of performing ijtihad, or one has the function of at-taqlid, following the one who performs ijtihad, right? So al-ijtihad, we can say, is the ability to deduce legal rulings from the primary sources of Islam, right? So al-ijtihad is the ability to deduce on one's own, independently, from the primary sources of Islamic law. At-taqlid is to follow someone who has the ability to do ijtihad when you're not able to do it. Is this clear? Very simple way to put it. So ijtihad is the function of a legal expert who has the ability to deduce legal rulings from the primary sources of the religion. And the one who is performing a taqleed is not able to do that, so he follows someone who can do that. Is it clear? This introduction is going to be detailed. Then the reading will go much smoother. So that's why I'm doing this. Now, as a general rule, before I go there, so the one who does al-ijtihad is called mujtahid, right? And the one who does at-taqleed is called muqallid. All right? So whenever we want to talk about who's who, the one who does al-ijtihad is called mujtahid. The one who practices at-taqleed is called muqallid, right? So when someone tells you, for instance, the way, let me go back, the way of performing a taqleed is to follow the mujtahid, right? So the muqallid follows the mujtahid. The mujtahid is the one who formulates a madhab. You follow? The mujtahid is the one who formulates the madhab. So the muqallid follows the madhab, which is the systematic structure of those deductions of legal rulings based upon the primary sources of Islam. That's called a madhab. The muqallid follows the madhab of the mujtahid. Let's put it like that. The muqallid follows the madhab of the mujtahid. Okay? Everybody with me? Please, I want you to understand this well. Please, please, please. I'm going as slow as possible so I don't lose anyone. If you don't understand, ask. Don't just let it pass by. I want to make sure you understand well, right? I don't want anyone to be confused when I finish. I'm not trying to impress you. I want to teach you. So don't just say, man, that was deep. La, I want you to understand. If you don't understand, stop me. And I don't care how many times you stop me. Make sure you understand what I'm saying clearly. So the muqallid is the one who's going to follow the madhab of the mujtahid. So every madhab, every school of thought should yeah, that's right, Imam Fahim. No muqallid left behind. That's funny. Boy, the boom bap is on fire. So every madhab is the work of the mujtahid. When his work is put in a systematic structure and codified and rechecked, that is called a madhab, right? And the madhab is the conclusion of the work of that mujtahid. And there's going to be more details, right? But for right now, I just want you to get this primary foundational point. Because that mujtahid is qualified to deduce rulings from the sacred law, from the primary Islamic text, when he does that, that work, that body of work is called a madhab, right? When I'm using mujtahid in this term, I'm going to add terms, so you have to have terminology when we talk. What I mean by mujtahid, when I'm talking like this, I mean mujtahid mutlaq. We can say it like this. All right. When I say mujtahid, I mean in this terminology, when I'm talking about establish a madhab, that is mujtahid mutlaq. That is an absolute qualified legal scholar. You can say jurist if you want, right? So that means he's at the top level because there are different levels of the mujtahid, right? They're not all the same level. But when I'm talking in terms of establishing the madhab, that's what I mean, an absolute legal scholar. Good question, Khadija. You mentioned that the mujtahid's work is checked. Who does this? Other scholars who followed his methodology after him, who reach some level of ijtihad. So when you have a madhab, it's really not the work of one individual. So that's the indication. When I say his work is checked, that means after him, his students who are like him, and the students of their students and the students of their students, all of those help to refine and check and verify his work. That's why it became so established. But that's the details. That's what I mean by that indication. Tell you. So if one doesn't follow a madhab, once you have all these terminologies, right? When one says, I don't follow a madhab, they're saying, in essence, that I'm qualified to do the work of the mujtahid mutlaq. When that person says, I don't follow a madhab, that means I am not muqallid. I don't follow anyone. By necessity, that saying means that I am mujtahid mutlaq. Do y'all understand that? That means I'm qualified to do it. In other words, I am an absolute legal scholar. Even if one doesn't say that by their words, the actual claim is saying that. Even if they don't say it in wording. Maybe the one who makes such a claim doesn't even know that this exists, right? Okay, so we said, before I continue, the mujtahid is deducing legal, the mujtahid mutlaq we're talking about, he's deducing rulings from the primary Islamic sources. What are the primary Islamic sources of law, right? The primary sources of Islamic law, right? Okay, can hear me pecking away. Yeah, Khatab. You know Arabic. I'm impressed. Oh my goodness, she's funny. Where's my glasses? Okay. Um, so yeah, that's Abdulaziz. I'm messing with him. He put an extensive definition of ijtihad. Right. I'll explain this later. It's what I said, just more in a technical Azhari, a technical Azhari way of saying it. The same thing with big fancy words to show how much Arabic we know. Now let me stop. I'm just messing with him. Don't pay me no attention. Barakallahu fikum, Sayyidi. May Allah reward you. So the primary sources of Islamic law are four. Right. And they are Al Quran. All this is coming. I just type slow. Those who type fast, they can get busy. As Sunnah, Al Ijma, and Al Qiyas. All right. So we said that Mujtahid, he takes from the primary sources of Islamic law, right? So the primary sources from which the Mujtahid deduces legal rulings, they are Al-Quran, As-Sunnah, Al-Ijma, and Al-Qiyas. Al-Quran is the book of Al-Quran. As-Sunnah, meaning the hadith reports related from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Ijma is the scholarly consensus of the Mujtahid scholars. Al-Qiyas is deductive analogy, which is one of the forms of ijtihad, right? That's where the Mujtahid works at as primary sources. There are secondary sources too, other things that other tools in his scholarly toolbox besides that. But these are the primary sources where he extract rulings, right? So whoever says, for instance, that I don't follow a madhab, they're saying I have the ability to do that. Qiyas is called deductive analogy. Deductive analogy, right? It means you have analogy between two things, one that exists and one that didn't exist, and you find something in this case and you make an analogy from that case to that case, right? That's called qiyas in its simplest way. It has many forms, but that's details. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the basis. All of this is a lot of extra things. Each of those is a field of study in and of itself. But for the purpose of what we're saying, all right, so it's what I said so far clear to everyone. Let me make sure Is it clear, everyone, what I mentioned thus far? Because we're only in this section. Because he said a taqleed, what's the proof of a taqleed? When you can't do ijtihad. So if you don't know what taqleed is and an ijtihad is, you can't even understand what he's talking about. So there's a proof. When you're not able to do ijtihad, you must do taqleed. So I explained to you what it is in general. Is everyone clear? All right, let me take a few of these questions real quick because they should relate to what I talked about so far. I'm going to go over this slow, and hopefully we can so the point that Sheikh Abdulaziz mentioned was that ijtihad, it's a collective work, not a singular work. So for instance, the school of Shafi'i is not just the ijtihad of Imam al-Shafi'i himself. Rather, it is a collection of the different ijtihadat, or we say the different ijtihads of his companions. And whenever you put all of those ijtihadat together, that is al-madrasatul madhabiyya. It is a Islamic school of methodology. You follow? So when we ever say a madhab, that's not just one individual, right? So the madhab of a Shafi'i is not just the madhab of a Shafi'i. Rather, it is the collective work of him, his companions, and other scholars who are qualified. Likewise, in the Hanafi school, Maliki school, those are groups of people who worked on a systematic structure called a madhab. Is that clear? So that's what he said. When he wrote that, that's what he was saying. So that's what a bunch of fancy Azhari terms to mean that. I'm always messing with him. Don't pay me no attention. I like to have fun. Learning should be fun. You ever see those kids in school? They're always picking with somebody. I was one of those guys, just mess with somebody. But we learning in the same time. Y'all follow? Okay. So that's an important point. Why? Because people think the madhab is just the school of Abu Hanifa, meaning it's only Abu Hanifa, or the school of Imam Malik is only Imam Malik, or the school of Imam Shafi'i is only Imam Shafi'i, or the school of Imam Ahmed is only Imam Ahmed. And that is so far from the truth. As Sheikh Abdulaziz mentioned, it is a collective legal deduction, not just one person. Whereas the one who says, I don't follow a madhab, is a singular individual doing that. And then we don't even got to talk about skill set. Okay, let me get these few questions. Did I miss any? All right, I think, yeah, I'm up to date. Okay, so the question was, who confers the title of Mujtahid Mutlaq upon a scholar? How is it ultimately decided that a person is a Mujtahid scholar? It is his level of knowledge. And then the scholars of a field, they examine the work and the skill level of a particular scholar to know his rank, right? So it is certain qualifications, which we're going to discuss, that the Mujtahid Mutlaq needs to meet. And the experts in the field, they know who reached that level. You follow? So there's, like if you want to be a brain specialist, right? There are certain things you must know to do that. And the people in the field of studying the brain or the heart, you want to be a heart specialist or whatever, the people in that field, the experts in that field, they know the qualifications that you need to reach the different levels in that field, which were established by the learned people in the field. If you want to do this, you need to know this. And when you learn all this, you are qualified. So that's how that's done. And to give you an example of that, that's why our nation really, since the 8th century, 7th century, has really never accepted no one's claim to being an absolute mujtahid. Even though it's been said about people, the nation has never really accepted that. Because of really the qualifications were not really met. I told you what Qiyas was. Okay, good. Absolutely not. Not a mujtahid mutlaq. And even if someone was a mujtahid mutlaq, they don't say it. They're usually following one of the 4 schools. But could it exist? It's possible. But we don't know anyone who made that claim in the whole world, except that people rejected his claim. And that's not a claim that learned people would make anyway, because they know it's involved. The one who would make that claim is really not that learned. However, there may be, when we talk about the different levels of ijtihad, there may be person that's a mujtahid in certain cases. That could exist. As for absolute ijtihad in all matters of the sacred law, no one has accepted that from anyone in our time. And I'm talking about among the scholars, and I'm talking about laymen like myself. The scholars haven't accepted that. One of the sheikhs of my sheikh, one of the sheikhs of my sheikh, one of my teachers, he wrote almost 60 volumes in Shafi'i fiqh. And he's not mujtahid mutlaq. And he didn't claim for himself. That's some serious research. Almost 60 volumes. No, the book is not published. And I'm in line waiting for it to be published. Right? But he didn't claim to be mujtahid mutlaq with that kind of vast knowledge. He's relating from the previous scholars. Okay, Bahia, just hang on. Just follow me. I know some of this, that's why I'm trying to go slow. You'll catch on after you hear just write the terminology down and do your best to just follow. And it's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll click in after a while. I'm just trying to get if I miss any of these questions. Okay, these are not questions. Okay. And the amal of Ahl Medina. In the Maliki school, that is a secondary source in the toolbox from those primary sources. Remember, I said you have the primary sources of Quran, Al-Quran, As-Sunnah, Al-Ijma', Al-Qiyas. In the Maliki school, you have this aspect of, well, how when they make legal rulings, when they deduce legal rulings, they take and consider Amalu Ahlil Medina, or the practice of the people of Medina. That's one of the tools in their juristic toolbox. That's not for every school. That's particularly in the Maliki school, and there may be other schools who looked into it, but that's something that's a source in the Maliki school when they do legal deductions. But it's not a primary source that all scholars agree on. When we talk about primary sources, we mean all of those scholars agree on Al-Quran, As-Sunnah, Al-Ijma, and Al-Qiyas. Mm, okay. So everyone follow me? I passed all the questions. Okay, go ahead, continue, inshallah. Bismillah.
Per the translator, for the key term qualified to issue expert legal opinion in Arabic, mujtahid, this ability being ijtihad, please turn to Book O and read O22.1 letter D.
All right. I'm going to read this whole section first, and then if we have time or tomorrow, we'll go back to that. So let's read this whole section. So we want to know, okay, you said mujtahid. What does it take to be a mujtahid? Because I just gave you a general. It's a top legal, qualified legal scholar, right? What are those qualifications that make someone like that? We're going to discuss them after we read this introduction, inshallah.
The qualifications of an Islamic judge, Qadi. The difference between the qualifications for the imam of a school and those for a judge or mufti is that the former's competence in giving opinion is absolute, extending to all subject matters in the sacred law, while the competence of the judge or mufti is limited respectively to judging court cases or to applying his imam's ijtihad to particular questions.
So here, if you want in general, there's levels. You have al-qadi, you have a mufti, and you have this mujtahid. In the past, it's not like that no more. It's totally upside down today. You may have a judge who don't even know his far'ain today. It's really upside down. But in the past, the judge usually was a mujtahid. In the past, way in the past, right? And then you had these top level legal experts, right? Today, it's not that. The levels have dropped tremendously. But in any way, the difference from them would be the mujtahid, his knowledge encompasses the whole sacred law. And he's able to give expert legal opinion in every aspect of the sacred law. Whereas a mufti or a judge may only give expert opinion in certain aspects of the sacred law, certain fields of the sacred law, right? Certain cases, but not the whole entire sacred law, not the whole entire Sharia, right? So for instance, when you go to some Muslim countries, like in Lebanon, the judge in the Islamic court is only dealing really with al-ahwal al-shakhsiyya, which he's only dealing with family cases, marriage, divorce, child custody, stuff like that. Not every aspect of the sacred law. So that when you go there, that's what they're dealing with, not other than that, right? Whereas the mujtahid is going to deal with everything, every aspect of the law. Now, go ahead.
No age of history is totally lacking people who are competent in ijtihad on particular questions which are new, and this is an important aspect of sacred law, to provide solutions to new ethical problems by means of sound Islamic legal methodology and applying the Quranic and Hadith primary text. But while in this specific sense the door of ijtihad is not and cannot be closed, Islamic scholarship has not accepted anyone's claim to absolute ijtihad since Imams Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, and Ahmed.
So here, now a important point that is being made here. Boy, we're getting hit today with, hey, watch, if I miss some of these robots and trolls, hey, don't click. I'm trying to catch as many, but we're getting hit today big time. I'm catching as many as I can. But if you see some stuff that has nothing to do with the class, some coming through, uh, don't touch it, right? And they're coming from YouTube, but they're moving fast. So don't press. Did everyone get that? Especially on YouTube. I don't know if it comes through on Facebook, but we're getting bombed. So don't press anything, any link. If it doesn't come from us, don't press it or don't click on it because they're moving fast. It's hard catching up with them. So don't click, please, please, please. Yeah, it's hard to get people up this early in the morning to do all that work. Maybe we will, that someone just come in and catches trolls and robots. But don't click. Stop being so nosy. Don't click, right? You're here to learn, not to click on ads, right? Okay. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Okay. So we're talking about the specific cases that may come up that didn't exist before. There's always going to be scholars who have to tackle those issues, and they may use ijtihad at a level for those new issues. And this way, there's always going to be that work. There's always new things that come up that the scholars of the time have to deal with. So in this sense, we don't say that no one is qualified to do ijtihad. What is being referred to is absolute ijtihad on all issues of the sacred law. That has never been accepted after those great imams by the nation, even though there were great scholars who reached the level of ijtihad. But usually their ijtihad agreed with the ijtihad of those four imams, so they always was within those schools, right? So there's a rule here that I should point out to you, that if the person has the qualifications of absolute ijtihad, it's not permissible for him to follow someone else's ijtihad because he can do it himself, right? He can do it himself. But if he's not qualified, then he must follow the ijtihad of another. Okay, go ahead.
If one studies the intellectual legacy of these men under scholars who have a working familiarity with it, it is not difficult to see why.
Now, here's the point. Read that line 2 more times. It's a very important case.
If one studies the intellectual legacy of these men under scholars who have a working familiarity with it, it is not difficult to see why. If one studies the intellectual legacy of these men under scholars who have a working familiarity with it, it is not difficult to see why.
And this is important. Knowledge is taken from the hearts of learned people, not the pages of books alone. Knowledge is taken from the heart of learned people, scholars, not from the pages of books alone. You can read all the books you want. As you have seen by now, most of you know by now, there's a big difference from reading a book on your own and reading with someone who read it with someone who understands the material. It's like night and day. Have y'all noticed that already? Many books that we read with myself and the other teachers, do you see a clear difference from reading a book by yourself and reading it with a teacher? Those who've been around, do you notice a big difference? So this So this is an important aspect. When you study these matters with living teachers who understand everything that is involved with this, you'll clearly see why people today, in their independent efforts, even if they mean well, have fallen way short of the mark. Like when you study the lives and the work of Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed, and their students and their levels of knowledge, it's like night and day. I remember one of my teachers, he was telling me about the book Fiqh Sunnah by an Egyptian man named Sayyid Sabiq, right? So I remember when in my days, that was like the major La Madhhabi book, La Madhhabi book, right? Fiqh Sunnah. So the book was called Fiqh Sunnah by Sayyid Sabiq, Egyptian man. So this book, I don't think people use it much today. At least I don't think, because even after Al-Albani refuted some issues in the book with the modern day Salafi movement, they stopped using that book. But anyway, that was the book when people didn't follow a madhab, they used to read that book, and that was their book in fiqh. And my teacher, he told me when we were studying, he said about this book, he said, it's not permissible to teach this book except to teach that is unlawful to teach. I never forget that expression, because when he said it, I cracked up laughing. He said, it is not permissible to teach this book except to teach that is unlawful to teach. And then he gave another expression. He said, Fiqh Sunnah, this book, compared to the other books of Al-Madhahib, is like taking a tricycle on the highway. And then, so he gave us those 2 points, which made it stick in our head, that this book, it's a one-man effort. And even if he meant well, it was a complete failure for what he was trying to do. He said, it's like taking a tricycle on the highway. That analogy for me was like so clear. Like none of us are going to get a tricycle and go on the major highway. No one's going to do that. Not even play with that. You won't even play and put the tricycle and try to ride it on the highway. Because you know on the highway, cars are going 80, 90 miles per hour sometimes. And even just as a joke, you might get ran over, right? So when you're talking about the works of a madhab, right, and you're talking about these one-man efforts, it's no comparison whatsoever. Like, and then when you go into really knowing what it takes, it's laughable for one of us to say that I follow Quran and Sunnah. Let me explain something to you about that, just as a point of reference. Most people who say that statement, I follow Quran and Sunnah, especially the ones we encounter, they don't even know enough of the Quran, understand it, and they don't even have access to the books of Sunnah. Most of the people we encounter who say, I follow Quran and Sunnah, I don't follow a madhab, they don't know and understand enough of the Quran in and of itself, just one book, right? And what I mean, Memorizing the Quran does not entail you understand it. Please, let's put that up, because this is a false concept people have. Memorizing the Quran does not mean that you understand it. Put it up. Put that up, please, because I want to put it in the box if someone can do that. Everyone copy that. It's very important to understand. We need to remove this false perception from our minds, because it will kill us if we believed it. So we have many people who memorize the Quran, and that's a great thing. May Allah reward them, and it is a feat that we all should strive to have the book of Allah memorized. That has nothing to do with understanding the Quran and extracting rulings from it. You follow what I mean? So the person who memorizes the Quran has nothing to do with extracting legal rulings from it. It's rewardable. It's a great feat. May Allah bless us all to memorize the Quran. But it has nothing to do with understanding its legal rulings. And because someone's a half of the Quran, it means that they have a good memory. And they worked hard. But it has nothing to do about their knowledge of the religion. Most of the memorizers of Quran do not understand its meanings, even those who speak Arabic. So I'm not talking about just non-Arabs. Even those who speak Arabic, who memorize the Quran, most of them do not understand its meanings. So let's not mix up the two. Even in Arabic, I'm talking about Arabic-speaking people who memorize the Quran, they don't understand its meanings. Most of them. If you gave them verses of the Quran and asked them legal rulings, they could not answer. Though they memorized the verse. But if you say, what is this legal, in Islamic jurisprudence, what is the meaning of this verse? They can't answer. So we don't want that misunderstanding to affect us in how we act according to the Quran. So that's one side from the Quran. The second point is from the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Most of the people don't even know the books of hadith enough, know what they are, let alone have covered and read them, and let alone, thirdly, to extract rulings from them. So 3 stages. Number 1, they don't know enough of the books of hadith. There are books of hadith they don't even know about. Number 2, they haven't read the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ enough hadith. And number 3, they're not able to extract legal rulings from those hadith. So there's 3 points. So the person who says, I follow Quran and Sunnah, if I want to give you an analogy, is like the one who says, I can build a house, but doesn't know how to lay a foundation. If you want to get an analogy, that one who says, I follow Quran and Sunnah, I don't follow a madhahib, is like the one who says, I can build you a house, but I don't know how to lay a foundation. You can't build a house without a foundation. If you want to get the Reliance of the Traveler, send your requests to this because we have more coming in. But if you want it earlier, just send an email to there with your information, and someone will get back to you. So, Sister Najia, if you want the Reliance of the Traveler, send an email there, telling them your request, give them your information, and they'll send you the form to get it. Because it's not on the website right now, because we're still waiting to restock. Do y'all understand what I mean by that? You cannot build a house without a foundation. Right? So likewise, you can't follow Quran and Sunnah if you don't know Quran and Sunnah. And when you say Sunnah, you're talking about the whole body of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and the books of Hadith and the different narrations. And you don't have that kind of knowledge. As one person I was talking to, he said to me, there is no Hadith on this case. And I said to him, I said, do you know all the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ? Which I read, that was like being funny. I know he didn't know. He said, no, I don't. I said, so what you should say is there is no Hadith that I know on this subject. Don't say there is no Hadith, because you don't. That statement means you know all the Hadith. And you're aware of all the Hadith of the Prophet, which you and I know is false. So just say, as far as I know, there is no Hadith. That's more appropriate, right? But when the person says, I follow Quran and Sunnah, it gives you the false assumption that they read all the Sunnah of the Prophet. And that's false. It's not true. They don't even probably have a quarter of the Sunnah that they read, let alone all of it. Is this point clear? All right, we're going to have to stop there. Where are we at?
We're on the third paragraph.
All right, we'll stop there and we'll pick up tomorrow from there. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Today's Tuesday, right? Inshallah, we will have tonight. There go Issa, starting trouble. Issa, I've been pressured to be nice. I don't want to be labeled as a jerk, so I'm not going to respond. Even though I would love to jump into that, I can't. I'm going to be Imam Nice from now on. So my new name is going to be Imam Otis Nice. So no more trying to poke the bear. I'm not doing it because I don't want to lose nobody because they think I'm too rough. So I'm going to calm down a little bit. I'm going to still have a little edginess, but I'm going to be Imam Otis Nice. And hopefully all of those who I offended will forgive me and continue to learn. All right, I'll see y'all tonight on the Black Imams Roundtable at 7 o'clock. I love you all. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. 7 o'clock tonight.